Um, Very nice break. And for those of you that I haven't seen in person yet, Happy New Year, even though it is almost towards the end of January. Welcome to 2024. Okay. Bianca, if you can go ahead and pull up the slide presentation. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in chat. And then after we finish the presentation, we'll allow a Q&A session. And this session will be recorded for anybody that is missing today and put on our website. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the presentation. So we wanted to touch base with everybody just to give you guys a status update of where we are with the project, as well as provide some upcoming important dates for training and such. We haven't sent all of the meeting invites out quite yet, but we are working on them. We're going to talk about DOA conversion, the user access to PDP, and then we're going to follow that up with a with a brief demo that our team members, the core team, our consultants with Rise Now are going to give us a glimpse into the system, and then we'll follow that with Q&A. So some important dates for the end users that we wanted to point out to you is there will be a meeting on February the 26th. And basically that's going to be like a brief training session in preparation for the Uniform Acceptance Testing, UAT, that will be scheduled for the following day. And in that UAT, users will have access. The team will provide a couple of test scripts for you to go in and actually create a requisition and have use of the demo site. So it's not the production site. So we're giving access to those folks that are on the list to have access to be able to access the demo system. So if there's anyone that you think may need that training, then let Bianca know so she can add them to the list. And then in March, we're going to have end user training for campus customers. That's going to be Wednesday, March 13th in the morning, I believe, and that will be primarily for requesters. And then the second session that day in the afternoon is going to be for approvers. And then we are slated to go live, fingers crossed all goes well, on Tuesday, March the 26th. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Liz in accounting so she can cover DOA. And for anybody that's new in this process that doesn't know me, I'm Marina Mazzano, Director of Procurement, and I am the lead on this project implementation. Okay, Liz, handing it over to you.
Thank you, Marina. As Marina mentioned, I'm Liz Gamez. I'm the Director of Accounting, and my team, and as well as the other accounting directors, we've been working on the new delegation of authority system, and we've already contacted lots of areas, lots of departments. So everybody that has helped us has completed lots of tasks with updating the forms, updating our signers. And so I wanted to just cover where we're at in the process. So right now we are still waiting for the setup and configuration to be complete for the new DOA system. We are waiting and we're working with the Chancellor's Office for that to be completed. Once that's completed, then we can take the data that everybody submitted to us, all the forms that you guys all sent for updates on the signers. We will upload that information onto a template, which we've already done, and we're working on that. And that template will be uploaded into the new system once the configuration is complete by the Chancellor's Office. So we're working on that still, and that's pending. And one of the things I did want to cover is interim DOA approvers. This is a hot topic. We're getting a lot of questions, and it's affecting a lot of areas, not just accounting, but it's affecting payment services, procurement, some of the events office. And what we've done is we've left the current signers in our system as they are now, but we are fixing them and we're updating them manually in our template that will be uploaded. And the reason why we did not fix them in the current DOA system is because we want to keep the signers and their authority on which funds they can sign intact, just in case some of these approvers revert back to their roles. So that's the hard part. And based on my experience, if we start moving people and start replacing them, we'll lose track of all the signers of all the funds and departments that they should be approving. And so what I recommend is that everybody, the file that's in box now is the old data that will have all the old deans, the provost, and our old president, and it'll have all the funds and departments that they sign. If you want to take a copy of that Excel file and keep it for your purposes, because if and when we do have a permanent dean or a permanent provost, in case Dr. Harper does revert back, then that we'll need to update that, and it'll be seamless once if we have that historical information. So it's always nice to kind of keep track of what they have currently signature authority over, so that it'll be easy if we have to either assign a new permanent dean, or if the dean reverts back or that interim position reverts back to their old position. It's just nice to have that historical information. We do have a lot of request forms that are currently pending for campus. I think for the auxiliaries, everybody is already caught up with all the forms, but for campus, we did have to cut off receiving any and accepting any forms. So if you submitted any forms sometime in January and it's still pending in Adobe side, that's the reason why we stopped accepting, is because we need to take the data, start converting it, start getting it ready for the upload. Once we're done with the upload, then we will resume all the forms in Adobe side. So we'll resume those forms, we'll accept them, and then we'll process them once we go live in the system. But if your form is, if you go into Adobe Sign and you see that it's pending and we haven't accepted it, that's the reason why, is we've stopped just so we can have a clean cutoff. Otherwise, we're just never gonna complete all those updates. And then once the system is live, we're hoping that we can have new updated files in box for everyone to use sometime in mid-February. So that's our goal, is to have it sometime in February, where we'll have all the campus and all the auxiliaries in an Excel format in the box. It will look different. It's not going to be the same exact file, but we'll try to get it to look as close to what it is now. Next slide. And I just want to remind everyone of the new structure. The forms that we're getting have information. People are just putting things differently. And so I just want to remind everyone that if you're updating something in BK001, BKC02, BKCPO, BKCST, or BKGRD, those funds will only use signers based on the department number. And so that'll make more sense once we see what it'll look like in the system. But whatever signer is for that department can sign on either of those 5 funds. The remaining funds, which is all your other M funds, any other BK funds not listed above, any capital or construction funds, all of those will use fund only. So what that means is the signer will be approving on that fund no matter what department is used. So I hope that clarifies that, because on the form what we're getting is people will fill out the DOA form and they'll put an M fund and then they'll still want to put a department. You can leave the department blank on section 2. So in section 2, if you're updating a signer and has an M fund or another BK fund, you could just put the fund number and not worry about listing the department number. And for the auxiliaries, that includes ASI, Foundation, Student Union, and SPA. Those will be fund only, same concept. You just need to put the fund number, no department, in section 2. When you're filling out the form, we wanted to remind everyone to please check the box or the little buttons that say add or delete. We're getting quite a few forms where people are not checking the box. And when the explanation on the form is blank, we don't know whether you want to add a signer or if you're removing people. And so we're having to contact people a lot, either by email or by phone calls, asking them what is it that the form is trying to do. So please remember to check the button, either add or delete. Sometimes if you happen to check delete, but you really meant to add, please remember you can clear the data in Adobe Sign, and that will remove your mistakes. I know it will delete everything and you have to start over, but that's better than to leave the box, the incorrect button checked off. And on the explanation box, we do ask everyone to please, you can specify what you're doing. It helps us understand what you're doing. If you say you want to add a signer to a fund, or if you're removing someone because they've separated, please use that explanation box because it's very useful for us, and it makes it easier for us to process the document with it. And that will expedite the processing time, because when we have a question, the form just gets delayed and won't get processed right away. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to cover how we determine the users for P2P. So as you're aware, our current system, anybody can submit a requisition because it's just a form. It's a manual form that people complete, and then they route through Adobe Sign, and that's how we get the form. And then at that point, procurement buyers go into the CFS, which is Common Financial System, PeopleSoft, and will create that purchase order. And that's when that amount gets encumbered on budgets, and that's how that process works. In Procure to Pay, so with that said, all of the people that can create and submit requisitions, there was no access that they needed in CFS because we weren't inputting requisitions in a system. We weren't using the requisition module. Now this system requires folks to have that particular role and that access. So without having any historical reference as to who uses requisitions, who submits requisitions, it was kind of up to us to go through and determine who needs this access, right? So of course, the requesters are the ones that are going to be creating and submitting the requisitions. And so we've identified, the admin support coordinators and the analysts. We also, procurement keeps a manual spreadsheet for requisition log that we've had for many years. And so Bianca went through that, and she looked to see if any users had submitted at least 3 purchase requisitions to procurement in the past year, to add those individuals on, as well as pro card holders. However, if they've made a purchase through the marketplace, because in this system, all the marketplace transactions are going to be no longer on ProCard. They are going to be on a PO in this new system. So just be aware of that. But a lot of people have a ProCard that they use for other purposes than buying office supplies and those types of items. So those people will continue to use their ProCard and follow the ProCard process for reconciliation. But the good news is anybody buying off the marketplace, you would not have to submit a ProCard reconciliation or even have a ProCard, because that's going to be done through this system. So if all you're buying ever is office supplies for your department, then perhaps you no longer need a ProCard if that's all you're purchasing is through the marketplace. So I wanted to make that clear, how we determined who was going to be on the list. We had to create a list to the best of our ability to identify who will be submitting requisitions, because it is a process in a system that requires training. And in experience, I've had people often have trouble filling out a requisition, which is a simple form that needs to be completed and submitted. So, having the access to go in here and know what they need to do to submit requisitions. If somebody's really only doing it once a year, then likely that task should be assigned to someone else within the department that submits them on a more routine basis. In addition, because there are going to be built-in workflows in this system, I'll give you an example. So if somebody is submitting a requisition for a consultant for you know, that's going to be a long-term consultant, like past a couple of months or a day or so. That has to go through HR for independent contractor review and approval. Procurement is now currently manually processing those reviews and approvals. We get the requisition that you've submitted, we route it to the appropriate area for review and approval, and then we process it once we have that review and approval. If any of the folks involved in those processes have questions, procurement's usually the go-between, going back and forth between the requester and the approver if they have additional questions or need more information. So being that these workflows are now built into the system and procurement won't receive a requisition until it's gone through any required reviews and approvals prior to it coming to procurement, for that reason, it was determined it won't really work for students to do this role, because the requester would then be contacting the student and they wouldn't know what department the student is with, who to contact. You know, there may be situations where they're not comfortable having confidential conversations regarding some of these processes with students. So, and then in addition, we'd have to provide access to those students as well as training. So it was determined that student assistants would not have access to procure to pay to submit requisitions, because I know right now there are some that just do the manual entry for the form and then it gets approved by certain people in the department and then it gets submitted. But just so that everyone's aware, students won't have access to procure to pay, which is primarily a procurement and AP system. As for approvers are MPPs that are on the current DOA as well as the interims. So a user can have both a requester and approval role. However, they cannot both create a requisition and submit it and approve it. So I know we were thinking about this, and I know there's a couple of areas where it's really a one-man show, where there's one person that's both, you know, MPP and the only staff member in that department. In that instance, if they need a requisition created, they're going to have to probably come up with a buddy system for other people in their division or their subdivision to work with them to create the requisition for that department and then submit it, so that way the MPP that's over that department can approve it. So just be aware of that. I know there aren't too many, but I could think of a few areas where that might be an issue. Next slide. Okay, that's all we've got now. I'm going to turn it over to our Rise Now consultants, and they are going to provide a demonstration.
Awesome. Thank you, Marina. So Chris has joined us. Chris is our functional expert, and he will be walking everyone through a system overview and how to create a requisition today, so that everybody can see what the CSU BUY system is about, and at a very high level to see how to create a requisition. We know that everybody will be functionally doing something different, but for the most part, how to create a requisition should resonate with almost everyone on the call. So he'll walk us through how to do that. And then once you start getting into training, you'll have a lot deeper dive as to what CSU has to offer, or CSU BUY has to offer, and all the details that come in with creating a requisition and all the other activities associated with your daily job. So go ahead, Chris, take it away.
Okay, hey, hi everybody. Excuse me. All right, so what you're looking at here is your test system, CSU BUY system. There's going to be two environments. One's test, and then of course, when we go live, you'll be in the production system. And this is your shopping homepage. So from here, if you know, this is where you're going to start off with your buying. You know, you have your org message here for announcements and links and that kind of thing. Some quick links. Anything under your, you know, that you need to approve is going to be here too. But down here, if I'm just scrolling down the main page, there's going to be some forms and some punch out catalogs. Anybody who's used the P-Card Marketplace today and in the past couple of years should know what a punch out is. And if not, I'll go into one. Let me clear my card first. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Okay, so Say I want to buy something today from a punch out catalog. I'm going to go down here. I should know my supplier. Of course, the catalog has to be set up. I think Waxy should be working in our test environment here. And what this does, a punch out catalog, for those who don't know, it basically is a hosted catalog from your suppliers. Looks kind of like their public site, but it's really just CSU's prices, contracted prices and products. So it is customized, even though it looks like their public site. They host it with your prices and products. You can go shopping as you normally would. Maybe I'm just going to get some carpet cleaner here. And so this is different than going to their public site, because you'll see once I put something in my cart and start to check out, it's going to be bring me back into CSU buy. So let me just put one of these in my cart, and I don't know, one of these. So that's what all I need today. You know, each of these punch outs will look a little bit different because they're supplier supported. They put it up for you. They'll have your branding and all that, or their branding and all that. But when I go to finish up my order here, it's at least in the Waxy punch out, I'm going to return my shopping cart. And so that takes those 2 items that I created from my cart. You know, I created the cart with the 2 items, and it brings me back into CSU buy as line items. And this is a draft cart. So I just built a draft cart in CSU buy. You can tell they're punch out items because that little icon. There is another way to purchase things. Those are the forms that I talked about. I'll show you that in a minute. But you can see here, it knows what commodity code it is. It knows if it's taxable and so forth. All I would need to do is finish my order up, proceed to checkout. There's some required fields in here. So this checkout screen's a little bit different than the P-Card Marketplace, a little more to it, including your accounting fields down at the bottom. And the only reason that these were populated is because in my personal user profile for this user, I've auto-populated them with my favorite funds and department IDs, for example. That is something that you can do once you first get into the system to make shopping easier, have it default automatically. You can also override it at the order level if maybe this particular order I'm using a different department. So I'm going to go in here and I can search through all my different department IDs here, including, let me see, so you can actually search using words as well as just the codes. And well, that was labor, but whatever. And then when I save it, it's going to tell me right now I can submit my request. So if I hadn't populated my user profile with my favorite things, I would have had to go in and choose my shipping address, for example, choose my deliver to location, choose my accounting fields. It'll tell me what's required, but in this case, they auto-populated for me, making it easier. I'm ready to submit my request. Before I do that, I think Marina was talking about the workflow a little bit probably, and this is what the workflow is going to do. There's a lot of steps in the workflow, but only certain ones will trigger based on my order. Some of them are based on department ID, dollar value, what commodity, type of commodity it is, for example, if it's IT or not, or facilities. So the workflow will be different for each of your orders based on what you're ordering. We're just going to get the approvals we need, and we want to get it expedited through as fast as we can, but get those approvals. At the end of that, the system's going to create the PO automatically. And it could be more than one PO because you could have a mixed cart, which means you can have a cart that has multiple suppliers, for example, items from multiple suppliers. And when that happens, it's going to be one requisition, and it's going to be multiple POs at the end. So at the end of the approvals, that requisition becomes POs, one or more POs. So before I submit, this is your checkout screen, shipping information, billing information, your PO details. Most of them are optional. You do have internal notes and attachments as well as external. The difference there is, and you can put in whatever you want in here, external will be sent with the PO to the supplier. Internal will stay within CSU by the supplier, will never see them. So that's a difference between that. And then your line item details, you could see the account was populated. The account is based on the commodity code. So with punch out items, they're all going to have, they're all going to specify what the commodity code is. That commodity code will specify what the account is. So that's one less thing that you have to do is you don't have to put in your account. That'll automatically be populated. So when you submit the request, this draft cart becomes a requisition. And anytime you want from the home screen or wherever, you can go into my requisitions. You can see all of the ones that are that you submitted, and you could even go into them and see where they are in workflow. So there's a full transparency here. You can see not only what step it's in, but if you click that step, you can see who the approver is. And of course, we have demo approvers in here in the test site. So this one, this step triggered because of the department ID. Bill approver is the owner of that department ID, hence he's going to be the approver. As soon as it hit this step, he was notified, and hopefully he'll go in there, review it, click the approve button, and it'll move on to secondary review, which there's Ashley and Michelle. So either one of those two can approve it. So that's a punch out. The other way to order is a form or a form request. You'll hear them called. Those are these specialized forms that are in the showcase down here. These are not in the P-Card marketplace today, but it is a good addition. It's for when you're trying to buy something that's not in a punch out catalog. So we'll only have a certain amount of punch out catalogs stood up. There's going to be other ordering that you need to do, probably with specific suppliers that do not have punch outs. In that case, you would go in here and maybe create a goods and services request. Most of these forms look similar. The questions are going to be specific to the form type. This one is general goods and services. So the form is basically kind of like a wizard. You go in here, you can read the instructions, and the instructions tell you not only when to use this, but when not to use it. We have specific forms, for example, for IT hardware and software. So you wouldn't use the goods and services requests for that. Today, maybe I'm buying some furniture, and you can see that's listed here as one of the available categories in this form. I'll hit next. Next thing I have to do is specify my supplier, and the supplier does have to exist and be active in CSU BUY. So you can go and start searching suppliers in here, or you can just hit search, and I don't know how many suppliers we have right now, but right now we only have 31. You'll probably have thousands eventually. So you'd probably want to do a supplier search. But anyway, in here, maybe I'm doing Boone Printing Services here. I'm going to choose my supplier, and I'm going to hit next. And you can tell the supplier that's a check mark. That means I have all my required fields. I'm just going to keep going down this form. I'm going to say, what do I need? I'm going to say, maybe I need printing services. I'm going to say services, other. I could do other, furniture, equipment, that kind of thing. The reason why we break them down is it's going to, if I choose furniture, it's going to give me a page with furniture specific questions. The idea is we're collecting all this information in the front end so that approvers can make a good decision when it comes to them for review. So I'll do services here, general services. Any question that has a star is required. So, is it a blanket? Yes or no? Is it a renewal of a previous purchase? So forth. Is it a sole source? If you say yes to that, that's going to trigger additional approvals in the workflow. So that's one of those conditional questions that's going to change the workflow up a little bit, maybe add a step or two. So when I hit next, it gave me an other goods and services page based on what I selected as the purchase type. If I chose furniture, for example, this would be a furniture page. And the reason is we want to collect that information. This is a very simple one because it's other goods and services. If it was furniture, there would be more questions that are furniture related. So I need printing services. I'd probably put more information in here about what needs to be done and how many copies or whatever. If I have any attachments, maybe some quotes or some specs or something like that, any kind of attachment, I could put multiple attachments in here as well. I would just put them right here, but that's not required. And then the final step before I add this to my cart, because this is going to be a line item in a cart, is my cost details. Again, another opportunity to put some quotes or other attachments if I want. But here is the price information, and this is required, most of these fields. Maybe I have $1,000 worth of printing. I'm going to put my unit of measure in as, I don't know, each. Most things are going to be each probably. And printing for administrators or something like that, probably more descriptive. But I just could say, okay, I'm going to start this service is going to be maybe next week and end at the end of the week. And then the final thing is my commodity code. You can see that is required. If I chose furniture or legal services or something like that, that would auto-populate my commodity code. But because I chose other, it is up to the end user to choose their commodity code out of the list here. And you can see there's a lot of them here. If I'm not sure where it is, I can just say, all right, show me anything that has print. And there's my printing services. So it went and found it for me. When I hit next, I should have all green check marks. That means all my required fields are done. I'm going to add and go to my cart. So that adds this form to my cart as a line item. And here it is. Looks like a punch out, doesn't have the little icon. And it's also got some service related information as well. And from there, the proceed to checkout works the same. You go in here, you give it your, you specify your ship to address if it's not auto-populating, or deliver to, your accounting fields and so forth. You could again check the workflow. Looks similar to the last one, but you can see procurement review is kicking in. So that wasn't there on the last order because it was a punch out. Because this is a what we call non-catalog order, a non-punch out order, it's a form, then purchasing, the buyers want to check it out. So either June, Bill, or Ashley here would want to look at it. One of them approves it and it goes to a PO. They won't see it until DOA has approved it and secondary financial review has approved it as well. Submit it. Now that draft cart has become a requisition. And at the end of requisition workflow, again, those POs will get created. Those POs will get sent out from CSU BY electronically, either fax or email or through a CXML, through a database to database connection for the punch outs. So the system will send those out automatically, and very fast process. As soon as it becomes a PO, it gets sent out right away, and could get fulfilled the same day. In fact, depends on the supplier. Marina, did you want other things? It's kind of the shopping overview.
Maybe quickly, the DOA approver process, just so they can get an idea of.
If you're an approver, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully I think I'll have one here. Let me log in as an approver. So the approvers are going to, it's a different role, and they're going to land on the same page, but you'll see here under my approvals, I actually have a bunch of documents in there. These are things that are waiting for my attention. There's other ways to get to this. So this is just kind of a quick screenshot of it. I can click on them and go into each one if I want. If I click on my approvals, this is my approval queue. So if I have my emails turned on for approvers, every time something hit my queue, it sends me an email. It also gives me a notification here that I have some approvals waiting for I have 7 of them waiting for my attention. If you're in the system all the time, you could turn those notifications off. That's up to you as an individual. There's other notifications in the system that when we go bring it online, as far as training. We'll show you how to update your notifications as needed. But as an approver, I'm just going to start working on my list here. Hopefully I won't have too many, but here I have 7 of them. I'm going to just hit each one of them. I'll go in to each requisition and I'll start looking at it. Here's my Boone Printing Services request. It is a form, so approvers can go in here and look at the details of the form. Say, okay, what is Rocky requester here ordering? That's why you want to probably move on a little descriptive than that, but they can see the cost details and so forth. When they're happy with that, they return back to the requisition. In simplest case, they're happy with it. They hit approve. And now it's out of their approval queue. You can say I only have 6 now. So as you approve, your queue gets smaller and smaller. Ideally, by the end of the day, you don't have anything waiting for you. Other things an approver can do. If I go into another one, maybe I have some questions on this one, or maybe I want to return it, or I'm not sure if maybe we have it in the store and I'm not sure. What I'd want to do is this, you can see there's only a few different options here, but if I assign this to myself, which means I basically lock it down so nobody else can do anything, I have a whole bunch of options here now. I could reject it, I could return it, I could forward it to another approver, I could approve it, of course. In this case, maybe I have, what are we ordering here? Yeah, this is the cleaning supplies from Waxy. Maybe we have this in the storeroom, I'm not sure. I could use the comments in here and I could send something to the end user or really anybody else. I could choose anybody to send this to, but in this case, I have a question for the person requesting it. Did you check storeroom for this? Yeah. And then when I hit the check mark, it sends the requester, in this case, Rocky, or whoever else I had, put on that list, an email with my question. And not only that, but it also has a link right back to this requisition. It also adds it to the history. So there's a running history of every order and every voucher and every receipt and credit memo. So what happened, and you can see that comment got added. Rocky could go in and put a comment right back to me, and that way there's a link and a history with that communication. Maybe Rocky went and said, okay, I did find these in the storeroom, I guess we don't need this. In that case, the approver could come in here and reject it. They could also return it, and the difference between the two is if you reject it, it sends them a message. This requisition remains in the system, but it's basically a dead document. They can't do anything with it. It just sits there as a rejected requisition. If they return it to the requisitioner, it becomes a draft cart again. And the advantage of that is that requester could go in, make updates to it, and resubmit it. It would start workflow over. So if it's something that maybe you just need an accounting field change, or maybe you want an attachment, you return it back to them. Can you add the specs for this? Although I don't know if you do specs for cleaning fluid, but you do that, that gets taken out of your approval queue. And you can see it's now, again, a draft cart. And it's been returned. So, the requester got notification, a link right back to it. They could update it, put in the specs or whatever the change was, resubmit it into workflow. And if I go back into my approvals, I should have 5 now. Yeah. And so that's how approvers would work. If I'm an approver and I'm going away on vacation and I don't want this to build up, things are still going to hit my approval queue unless I do something called assign a substitute approver. So while I'm gone, maybe I'm taking a vacation next week. So I'm going to say for next week, I'm going to be away. While I'm away, I'm going to send my approvals to, and these are just approvers that I could select from Dana Approver. So on Monday, any order that's supposed to come to me through the workflow rules is actually going to be going to Dana Approver. And on Friday, when I get back, the system's automatically going to turn this off and start sending me my approvals again. If I get back early, I come back here and to substitute, and I'm getting my approvals again. Miss anything, Marina?
No, I think we covered all the main parts. Anybody have any questions on anything you've seen? Or any functionality, Bianca, any of the other
I have
team
a question.
members?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Did I hear you say that when you go into this system, that a request may generate multiple purchase orders?
Yes.
Okay. Why would it do that? It is because, say, you're in the system and you're purchasing from multiple vendors?
Yeah, that's one reason. That's probably the most typical reason, Paul. I mean, I can go in here and create a cart, and I can have 10 line items with 10 different suppliers, and it's all going to be one requisition. That cart's going to become a requisition. So they're only approving the one requisition, but when it gets fully approved, yeah, the system will break it out into the 10 different POs for each supplier.
Would the approver be able to approve on a line item basis and allow certain purchases with certain approvers, but not others? And so, for example, they want backup on one of the purchases, but they want to go ahead and approve, 5 of the 10. Would that process the purchase orders for the 5 that they approve?
Yeah, what they can do is, again, yeah, say I have 10 line items, they don't want to approve 2 of them. They can select those 2 and say, they could reject those 2 line items and then approve the rest of the order. And that will go
Okay.
through. And
But then, go ahead.
and the end user will know that they rejected a couple of the lines. There'll be a
Okay.
comment for that.
All right. So we wouldn't be able to, like you were saying, ask for additional information on 2 of the lines, but approve the others. It's either they have to all be approved or declined before
Well,
it moves
yeah,
forward.
you can't approve certain lines today and then approve the rest later, if that's what you're asking.
Yes. I'm sorry, you can or you cannot?
You cannot.
You cannot do that. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So if the guys are gonna purchase from multiple vendors and there's a chance that one of the things may be questionable, they should probably set it up in a separate request.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, okay. I noticed that one of the things that you can select is the blanket purchase order. When you select a blanket purchase order, would you be able to code that to multiple chart strings?
Yeah, any line item you can do splits if you want. And in fact, if you have 10 different line items, they don't all have to be within the same chart codes.
So I can do multiple different funds and department combinations.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. I noticed on the form request down below that there was a special form request for facilities purchases. How is that different from the others? And is that for maintenance and operations repairs, or is that for any of the services that we do within facilities? And also in construction, I guess, is the other side.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the one to answer that one, to be honest. It is supposed to be just used by facilities folks, but as far as what they're doing, what they're using it for, I'm not sure if I'm the one to answer that. It'd probably be somebody at CSU.
Okay.
Hey, Paula, we can discuss it offline.
Perfect. Next question is, you were talking about the workflow and how, depending on what type of item was going to be purchased, it may go to HR to approve if there's an independent contractor, and that it may also go into facilities for approval. Can you describe that workflow process? Who in facilities would be receiving that request for review?
Hey, Paula, I can provide you that information. I've had the discussion with Christine, and she identified who in your area would be the appropriate people to get that request. So I can discuss that process with you.
Okay. And then is there a way to set up notifications so that anytime someone purchases something for any of our departments, a copy of the request goes to our admin?
Uh, we can discuss that. There's also a way, if you're looking at my screen still, to go in and create searches, you know, for requisitions, POs or whatever, and you can filter them down on things like maybe your department ID or your fund and that kind of stuff. You could even save these searches. So if your admin is looking for reports on that, instead of keep getting emails for it, she can customize a search so that anytime she wants, she can click on that save search and see all the orders within those filters. Does that make sense?
Yes. Would she only have access to the departments or funds that are within our area, or would she have access to everyone's?
The whole campus.
The whole campus. Okay. All right. All right. That's all the questions I have on what you've just presented. Thank you so much
All right.
for your answers. I appreciate it.
Sure, good questions.
Hey, Chris, can you show them copy your cart real
Mhm.
quick?
Yep. So, and you're still seeing my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so copy to cart is, say if I want to order something that I ordered last month or something like that. I don't want to have to go and find that product or reproduce that order. I want to do it really easy. Let me see if this one will work here. So what I can do is I can pull up that old requisition, or it could be a PO, either way. And I can find that item. In this case, it's a goods and services. So for an office chair, and maybe I don't want to recreate that form again. What I can do is just check it and add it to my active cart. So that will take that form as it was originally set up with all the details, and it would put it right into my cart, so I don't have to reproduce it.
So that's really helpful for blanket purchase orders. So, you know, the heavy lift is the first year creating these individual blanket POs, but then year after year, you can then copy cart, put that into a PO for the next fiscal year, and then just adjust as needed, right? So if the pricing's changed or quantities are changing or things of that nature. So having the ability, or if you have items that you order on a recurring basis, that'll save you time from having to do all the typing for lines.
Yeah, that'll also help with like if you're just reordering like a desktop setup too, like a Dell laptop and a, monitor, like just copied cart.
And you can even put it into a favorite folder as well,
Mhm.
which is nice because, you know, your favorites, if I do that, I'm going to put it in a new personal folder, and I'm going to say office chairs or something, office furniture, whatever. When I do that, next time I come shopping, I don't want to have to look for an old order. I don't want to have to, you know, I could just click favorites. And that didn't work. Why didn't that work? And it should be, maybe I didn't finish doing it, but it should be right here. And that way you would just add it to your cart from here. I think maybe I didn't push the final button when I did that, but anyway, trust me, it works.
In response to a question Rebecca asked on budget analysts, if that's the same role as the secondary approver,
Yeah.
that is not. Workflows are created for a specific process and they have to be customized in procure to pay. What we have determined, and we've shared this information in previous discussions that we presented to Change Champions and other groups, is you'll have the ability to assign a cart. So a requester could be, say, a coordinator in a department, and they can then assign their cart to a budget analyst for that, I don't know, subdivision, division, that if that's an internal process that you want to do, that's the way to do it. And then from there, the analyst can then, it would be in their name, and when they submit it, the DOA approver can see that it came from an analyst if that's the process that has been determined. And Cami, there is a workflow for IT, and I've had discussions with some of your team members on that process.
So I think there's a lot of great questions coming up, and I think this is an awesome opportunity. I will work with Marina and Bianca to put together a place for everyone to submit your questions so that we can go ahead, collect them, and get them answered, because I'm sure it's, you know, as you think about this demo that Chris was able to provide to everybody, more questions will arise. And this way, everybody will have an opportunity to go back and review those questions and answers. And if anything comes up, then this way you'll have a direct way to correspond with the project team before training. And this will also give us insight as to anything specific to bring up during training that we may need to focus on that may be of specific interest to the group and to your campus. So I will work with Marina and Bianca to create a forum and a place for you to submit those questions in a timely fashion. We'll get those answers back, and then we'll also be sure to incorporate those into your training opportunities. So I thank Chris for going ahead and giving a great demo and giving everyone some insight to the CSU BI platform. And I'm going to turn it back over to Marina.
Okay. I think that was the last part. I think the final slide on the presentation was just Q&A. So any additional questions? We've got a few more minutes if people can think of anything. And if you think of something later, you're always free to address that to Bianca or me, and we can get that information out to you. I mean, it's still a work in progress if you think about it. I mean, for our campus, it's a big lift in that we have a manual form and we're moving to a system, whereas a lot of the other CSUs are already using the module, the requisition module in CFS. So they're accustomed to inputting requisitions and it going through an approval process within that system. So it's just a matter of changing how we kind of think about things. And we understood that processes were going to change. Currently, requisitions are routed for numerous signatures and initials and approvals. And, you know, when this system came up, the chancellor's office did evaluate it, and they've based it on ensuring that it meets our policy requirements, right? So this is not something that just Bakersfield decided we're going to do this and we're creating it and customizing it as we want it to be. It's being handled by the chancellor's office. They are the ones that are configuring the system, and we've just had to learn how to make it work for our campus and change processes and procedures to be in line with this new system that eventually all 23 campuses and the chancellor's office will be utilizing. This is not something that we can elect to do the system. This is being rolled out system-wide. It's just we are one of the early campuses that will be moving on to the system. There are 2 campuses that are currently live that are that's Fresno and that's Chico, and we are next along with SLO, San Luis Obispo. So that's why in the demonstration it was the SLO business units that you were seeing and the SLO buyers. And then after that, it'll be another group of campuses and so on and so forth until all campuses are on this system. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How will this process work with grants and their analysts and the PIs and the million people that they need signatures?
Yeah, we created a workflow for that. So there is a small workflow similar to like the HR independent contractor workflow, the facilities workflow, the IT workflow. So anything that requires some type of review and approval process currently, whether procurement's doing it manually, which for a lot of them we are. I'll reach out to facilities when I have questions on things that I feel like need their review and input. But then we have the IT system, which already has a developed process. So we're working to address to make sure all those requirements are fulfilled in this system.
Thank you.
Jeanette, I'm not quite sure on your question what you were
I
wanting.
can add on to Jeanette's question.
Okay.
I'm looking at the payment matrix for CSUB dated November 1st of 2023, and it talks about the items that can be purchased on a Pro card. And it talks about, you know, advertisements, books, registration fees, memberships, office supplies. But for facilities, as an example, it doesn't talk about any other types of supplies other than office supplies. So at what things can we buy on the Pro card? Is it only specifically what's on here? Or can we continue to buy other materials and such.
That
And-
payment matrix, Paula, is for all of campus. I wouldn't, if I put cleaning supplies on there, everybody on campus would think, you know what I mean?
No, I understand,
need
and
to
that's
change-
and that's why the question. That's why I'm
Uh-huh.
asking the question.
If
Exactly.
it's available on, shouldn't it be done through here now?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
We are strongly encouraged by the Chancellor's Office to use the suppliers that are in the marketplace catalog. Specifically, I mean, there are some where they are very insistent, like Staples. The reason is we have negotiated contracts with those vendors, so procurement doesn't have to worry about, oh, you know, do we have a competitively bid contract if we're doing this amount of spend with this contractor? Like, Chancellor's Office has worked to secure pricing that's for items that are most commonly used for campuses. So we direct people to use the marketplace as much as possible. Again, that will be a transaction in the system, but it's going to be similar to ProCard now in that procurement won't need to be involved in those transactions as long as they meet certain criteria, like they're just supplies and they're under a dollar amount. I want to say the threshold is $3,000. It would not require procurement involvement. So it wouldn't be going to a procurement buyer for them to review and then process the purchase order. It would like automatically process once the DOA approver has approved it, because it's already items on a contract pricing that we are fully aware, familiar with, have been negotiated by the CSU, right? So it's redundant to have a campus procurement department involved in those transactions.
No, absolutely.
But we realize there's still things people are going to need to have a pro card for outside of the items that are in the marketplace. Some folks have travel enabled on pro cards. That's still going to continue. And for items that are, and there are some vendors that are insistent that they will only accept credit card and they will not accept a purchase order. So we understand there's always going to be reasons why things may be outside the system. One thing to think about in this system is only for vendor payments. So no student payments, no staff payments, no faculty payments would be processed through this system. So for procurement, we only deal with vendors. So for us, it's fairly simple. We are exclusively pretty much going to be working in this system. For accounts payable, it's different because they process payments for staff and faculty and students. So those payments will be done outside of the procure to pay system. We're not going to put students, staff, and faculty as suppliers in this system. So there will still be the old direct pay form that you would use for an employee reimbursement, right? Or
Right.
student reimbursement.
Okay, so anytime somebody is going to purchase something, they should look at the marketplace to see whether or not those items may be available there first before they go and they drive over to Home Depot and buy something off the shelf.
Yeah,
So that's number one. And then the other thing is any vendor that we need to send a purchase order to has to be set up in the P2P system so that we then can select them as the vendor in the system. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct. And Becky's been
Okay.
working very hard to get as many of our suppliers onboarded before we even go live to ensure we have, you know, all our vendors in there. However, you know, it's really up to the vendor because they have to onboard themselves in this new system because we want to make sure for accuracy, they're putting in their information and there's some questions they need to answer. There's some checks that are done when they input information.
Mhm.
So,
So
if we-
basically, if there are materials, supplies, consumable goods that we want to purchase, the vendor doesn't put themselves in the system, we can use our Pro Card. When it comes to services, since we can't charge services on the Pro Card, anybody that provides services and comes on our campus has to be registered in the system so that we can go through and get all of the insurance and everything set up. Is that correct?
correct.
It's correct, but I
Okay.
would stress that I would really love for you, if someone isn't set up, to try to get them to do it.
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we want to
Everyone
make
we've
sure.
paid the last 18 months has received an invitation.
Right.
53%, and multiple invitations. We have 53% of them have signed up. So that's
Okay.
pretty good, but we'd like it to be higher.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so ultimately, and I know this is going to be a little harsh, but if a vendor refuses to sign up, then, and it's a service, we can't do business with them.
We
Okay.
should not be doing business with
No.
them. If it's something that is an absolute critical need for the campus and there is absolutely no other vendor that can supply that, then we can have a discussion on that. But essentially, we want all of the vendors to go into the system and onboard themselves. So with that said,
Okay.
it is going to require folks to kind of plan ahead, because if you're trying to get an order submitted to a vendor that's not in the system, be aware that process is going to take longer, because the vendor then has to receive the invitation, they have to go in and onboard themselves, and at the chancellor's level is where the review and approval for suppliers will occur. It won't be done at a campus level anymore. So it won't be our accounting folks that are creating that supplier in the system. It's there are more steps, there's going to be more time. I cannot speak as to how, quickly the chancellor's office team may get their queue of suppliers that they need then to verify and then approve to make them available in the system for us to be able to order from them. So I'll be honest, there's a lot of times procurement gets requisitions like the day before an event, and that purchase order needs to go to the vendor, or day of, or sometimes
We
even a
know.
few days later. So
Yes.
that's
No,
going
we
to
know.
be a real challenge. So, it's really important to plan in advance as much as possible, so that way there's no delays that we're waiting on.
How can we find out which of the vendors we use have
Send
not
me a
responded?
list. Send me a list of your vendors.
Okay. All right.
And I
Thank you.
can,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, because we want
Anybody
to
can
help.
do that, not just Paula. You can
Yeah,
send
because
me
that way
an
we
email and I'll tell
Okay.
you if they have enrolled or not.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we're already past time, guys, so I don't want to keep everybody. So again, we are happy to answer any questions that you guys might have that come up later, and we'll start working on maybe having like an FAQ document, for frequently asked questions that we can have up on the website too for folks for reference. And we do post videos from the recorded sessions from the meetings and other correspondence on the CSU by P2P website. So please check that out for any communication. We will be working on sending out some campus-wide communication and the meeting invitation for training. All right, thank you all for participating in this session. I appreciate all the questions and the thoughtful insight, and we look forward to seeing you guys in training fairly soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.